This is episode 5 of Chewing the Gristle, a poetry chat with Al Black and Tim Conroy and our special guest, poet, spoken word artist, and motivational speaker, Angelo Geter. Angelo Eyeambic Geter is a poet, spoken word artist, and motivational speaker. His work touches on a variety of issues, including social justice, race, grief, character, and manhood. He blends his pieces with contemporary stories and personal narratives that transcend a traditional performance. He is currently the Poet Laureate of Rock Hill, where he advocates for poetry through civic engagement and community outreach. He is the 2019 All-America City winner, the 2018 National Poetry Slam champion, Rust Belt Regional Poetry Slam finalist, Southern Fried Regional Poetry Slam finalist, and has performed across the country. He is also a member of the board of directors of the Watering Hole Poetry Organization. Welcome, Angelo.
Hey, how's it going, Al? Tim, thank y'all so much for having me, man. It's really an honor to be here today. Awesome.
When you first discovered poetry, which came first for you, written poetry or spoken word, and who are your poetry influences?
Yeah, great question. So I discovered poetry first in middle school. And so it was a teacher, and she gave us an assignment and basically was saying, she introduced us to the concept of what poetry was and just told us to write our feelings down. So that's when I fell in love with the art of poetry and just being able to be free on paper. That's when I really started loving it. But then I kind of wrote casually. I wasn't really writing a whole lot, but I was doing it here and there. And then in college is when I rediscovered, I guess, my love for it. And that's when I found spoken word from watching that poetry jam. And then I was on campus. We brought different spoken word artists to campus. And so that's when I really started fully going into it and performing and those kind of things. Like I said, I was kind of a closet poet before, reading here and there, but then is when I really started kind of sprouting. So so in terms of poets that really inspired me, the first spoken word poet I saw in person was a guy named Kirk Nugent. And he's pretty well known and respected on the spoken word realm. So him, there's a gentleman named Ed Mabry, who's actually a friend of mine, who's a several-time individual world poetry slam champion, and just an amazing artist and writer. So those, and Black Ice is another guy as well, who was also in Deaf Poetry, pretty well known. So those are my performance poetry influences. And then when it comes to written word, definitely Yusef Komiyaka. Lately, I've been really reading a lot of Jericho Brown's work. It's really been encapsulating me a lot. He's an amazing guy. And even there's so many other writers, but those are the two right now that I say the most that are influencing me.
Hey, Angelo, I know sometime, was it last year, you were named Poet Laureate of Rock Hill. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your experiences as Poet Laureate. What sort of activities you've been involved with, how much you're working with students. What are some of the things you've learned in the experience that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I want to say, to the Poet Laureate Committee, I'm really, excited and, honored to be a part of that, and to be the second Poet Laureate of Rock Hill is really, really awesome, and the first person of color, so that's really awesome too. And so in terms of what I've learned, I think really it's really funny because the first person that was in the position wasn't in it super long, and so I think I'm educating the community a lot. So that's what I'm learning, is that a lot of people don't know what a Poet Laureate is, but they know it means something. And so I'm really able to, in a good way, define what it looks like, and then I'm an atypical laureate. It usually is somebody that has done a lot of publication, written word, and books and those kind of things. And I'm primarily spoken word. I do page poetry too, but primarily spoken word. So being able to educate is what I've learned, and the impact of what it has in terms of what I've also done in the community. We've done a lot of stuff already working with different events. They contracted me to write poems for certain events. We did something that's really cool. In February, we did it's called Poetry in Motion, and I read poems on the bus. So we have a new bus system in Rock Hill, and it's about to be a year old. I think in June will be a year that they've had the bus system, and so we had the idea to do this on the bus. We could partner with the library, and it was really, really awesome. So being able to engage the community in that way and put poetry in a way that they may not normally be accustomed to seeing it. And then Rock Hill is such a sports town too, like it's really big and known for football and those kind of things. So being able to put it in a different space and highlight arts and words and language versus just being places known for athletics.
Yeah, I know the mayor of Rock Hill is pretty much a person that pushes literacy a lot too. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's really great. So they have a program called Rock Hill Reads, and he's been really, really big on making sure that, you know, youth really are big on literacy and learning how to read and things. And so when I got selected for this position, that was one of the things they wanted me to really focus on was literacy and promoting literacy throughout the city. So it's been really, really great so far.
Hey, would you mind taking a few minutes and reading or sharing a few poems with us?
Absolutely, sure. We can do it all day. So I think I'm gonna start off with a page piece first. I believe both of you guys were involved in this, but the Post and Courier had a series called Poetry in Times of Crisis that Marjorie Wentworth put together, and I was honored to be one of the poets that she asked to be a part of that. And so this is the poem I put together for that collection. It's called When the Virus Comes. When the virus comes, talking heads on television screens will tell you to abandon ship, to drown yourself in a sea of isolation, submerge homes in Lysol wipes and hand sanitizer, engulf body in face mask and plastic glove until it becomes second nature. They will tell you to turn your kitchen into a panic room, basement into fallout shelter, instruct you to grab everything you can while you still can. They will say, the shelves at the stores are empty, and not realize they are also talking about you. They will preach from the gospel of quarantine, shout parables of thou shalt wash thine hands, for God so loved the world, he socially distanced himself from the very people he wanted to save. It will make you wonder how a hero or a government can rescue someone that they can't even touch. When the virus comes, you will kiss your lover like it's the last time, because maybe it is. You will dance on timelines like decades are stuck on the balls of your feet, sing like a quartet is trapped in your throat. Laugh like this is the last time you know what joy feels like, because maybe it is. And today, that would be more than enough.
That's great.
Very nice.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Can we keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll switch it up. So this next piece is one of my spoken word, I say performance poetry, really. Performance poetry pieces. And it really touches, a lot of my work, like you said in the bio, touches on like social justice and things of that nature. And so this is exploring the concept of what it means to be a warrior, not in a traditional sense, but what it means for us to be warriors. So that's what this poem's called, Warriors. They say warriors are born in the middle of warfare. Soldiers are bred when gunpowder combines with the residue of fear stored inside of your vocal cords. When the oxygen in your nostrils turns into hand grenades with C4s lodged in throat. They call it a war zone. When tear gas suffocates your lungs, bombs implant shrapnel in your eyelids. When terrorists begin to terrorize, suicides turn into ceremonies. When Patriot Acts perpetuate operations that are supposed to endure our freedom, they call it a war zone when AKs, ARs, and MPs turn bodies into alphabet soup. When waterboarding becomes nothing more than just a buzzword. Iraqi soldiers holding machine guns in a child's face like Christmas gifts. Somalians stripped from their homes. This is what they all call a war zone. And while we're watching MSNBC, there's a real war going on in our own backyards, where single-parent mothers are cradling their children like assault rifles. Deadbeat fathers are using their fists to finger paint black and blue road maps on women's faces. When child support turns into another child left behind, the gunshots swish through the air like jump shots. Police sirens sound a lot like Haitian mothers screaming in auto-tune. Newtown to Connecticut turn into obituaries full of children that have been chopped and chopped, and screwed. See, this is no ordinary war zone. This is no Iraq. This is no Afghanistan. This is homegrown hatred, broken down into dime bags using the Constitution as rolling pin. Overdosing on Kush and loud instead of enjoying the solace of our silence. Taking shots instead of shooting down our pride. Hangovers turn into hymnals, birthing blind ignorance. And y'all, there is no morning after pill for complacency. No plan B or exit strategy for stupidity. See, we are forgotten we were born to be warriors, implanted with telescopes in our eyes so we never lose sight of God. Cell phones stuck behind our rib cage so our hearts are on speed dial. Warriors who mix Selma in our Similac, Appomattox in our attitudes, Montgomery in our majesty, Columbine in our cadence. Warriors with levees for legs, tsunamis for tears, tornadoes in our teeth. Warriors who smile at fear, frown at death, believe tomorrow is a coward's excuse to delaying our destiny. Warriors who march to the beat of our own drum. Warriors who believe 911 is more than just an area code. Warriors who march with Martin, sat with Malcolm, and break bread with Trayvon. Warriors who have forgotten what war actually looks and sounds like. We have become junior ROTC cadets searching for our medals, looking for our orders, ready to fight a war, but it is already too late. That's warriors there.
That's awesome. Angelo, that was great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I will, I had the whole list of things I want to do. Now I'm feeling different now. Yeah, I'll show this one. So there's a group in Rock Hill called Parent Smart, and they basically focus on childhood literacy, and they had an event maybe in January, February-ish, and they honored this couple named the McCoys, and the McCoys did a lot of advocacy work and fundraising and supporting. So they asked me to write a poem to honor them and also honor the moment what Parent Smart was doing. So here is that poem. It's called Oasis. The art of planting things is one of the world's oldest pastimes. When a community is in the midst of droughts or in need of replenishing its crops, farmers grab handfuls of seed to replace what has already vanished. They hoist the future in their palms and spill tomorrow in the dark canvas below, hoping to sprout masterpieces from this barrenness. Over time, roots crawl through the earth until flowers are born dancing on warm soil, lifting their hands to beaming sky in hopes of grasping the sun. This is what it means to give birth to the unexpected, to raise vines when weeds have always polluted the garden of potential, when nurturing and not abandoned, investing without defaulting on responsibilities. In this world, our children are sunflowers, in need of a parent's light to shelter them from darkness, fragile but faithful, bright and beautiful, a greenhouse of ambition ready to sprout success. And we know that a crop is only as good as its gardener, so we use words to fertilize their imagination. We plant truth in the face of lies, instill love in the midst of hate, nurture hope and harvest healthy minds. We read, we bond and grow, even when the pesticides of opposition try to infiltrate us. Our strong foundation has us rooted in belief, regardless of how our limbs may get twisted in the process. We extend our hands to hold theirs, guide them through the maze of confusion, deposit knowledge in the oasis of their brains, and wait for the future to grow.
That was wonderful. We want to shift gears and ask you some more questions.
Sure.
And my question that I want to ask is, your process for writing a spoken word as opposed to a written poem, are they different? And what distinguishes a good spoken word poem as opposed to a good written poem?
Oh man, really great questions. So in terms of the process for them, honestly, my process is pretty much the same. It's just the approach to it once I get the idea. So a lot of times when it comes to spoken word pieces, it'll be something that I read on TV or read on TV, watch on TV or read, or things that just come across and just ideas hit me. I have like a whole list of notes in my phone that of just ideas for poems, and so that comes. And so there, I think when the idea comes, it's like, okay, should this exist more so than how I'm going to write it. So this idea, will it exist well? Will it come off well on paper? Is it better suited for, a performance? Sometimes I know that off the bat. Sometimes I really don't know once I write it, to be honest with you, because there's certain pieces that can exist in both spaces that, can look really good on paper and then also be really great on stage, And then there's pieces that are really only good on stage and not good on paper, So it really just depends once I do that. But so the process is really figuring out where I want the piece to go and exploring the best avenue to convey the message. And then after I do that, usually about like halfway to finishing the piece, I kind of know already where it's going to go, where I'm going to do with it. Especially if I'm memorizing it, if I unintentionally start memorizing a piece, then it's going to be on stage. And then if I don't do that, then it means it's probably just on page. It just kind of happens naturally for me. So to answer your question, what is a good spoken word piece versus a not good one? That's subjective, to be honest with you, right? I think for me, I think for anything, for whether it's on page or not, you want to be taken on a journey, and I want to be able to visualize what you were doing when you were writing this, or if it's a story, I want to be in the story with you. And so anything that can really pull you in, I think is really an effective spoken word piece. And then it's more than just about the piece itself. So the piece could do that well, maybe your performance doesn't. Maybe your performance does, but the writing doesn't. So a good spoken word piece is typically that can do both, where you have sound writing technically as well as the performance conveying the idea of what this thing is that you're trying to talk to us about.
Hey, Angelo, I'm going to ask,
Sure.
In terms of either writing a poem or getting down a spoken word piece, in that process of submission or performance,
mm-hmm.
What can you tell the emerging writer about rejection, about not successful in that struggle past failure?
Right. Yeah. I mean, failure is necessary. I had to learn that, getting into the art form. And it's anything, right? If you play sports growing up, you may not make the team the first time, or you may not, hit the ball out the park, or you might not make the first shot. So you have to kind of learn how to deal with failure and building that muscle. So honestly, now I really embrace failure. Of course, I don't want to fail on certain things, but when I do, it's like, okay, well, what lesson did I learn in the midst of this process? So, I've submitted for contests for paid poems and not gotten it, right? But in the midst of it, when I was writing and editing the piece, I became more meticulous with how I wanted it to be presented. So I may not have gotten it this time, but I learned so many things because I was specifically tailoring this to this thing, and that probably made me a better editor or a better writer. Same with performance poetry. If you do a poetry slam competition and you may not do as well, but then you watch what everybody else did and what made them well, what did they do that you can adapt to your own style that can really make it go across? So I would say, for one, don't embrace the failure. The first thing is embrace that and learn the lesson from it, and then figure out for you what your niche is and how you can turn that thing into something positive. Maybe you said a line in a poem that didn't make sense to anybody. So the next time when you go back to it, like, oh yeah, this wasn't good. So let me replace this. And then maybe this isn't for this poem. Maybe this goes here, to this other piece completely. And so I think that's how you want to do it, is really tailor it to not fix the failure, but to adapt it for next time so you won't.
I'm going to kind of drill down
Sure.
a little bit about how your beliefs, the daily, weekly ups and downs of life, culture, faith, how do they enter into your poetry, and what words of advice would you give to the emerging writer about harnessing that energy?
Yeah, great. So in terms of The first part of the question, I mean, it definitely impacts me. I've been really big on understanding my identity as a person and how I exist in the world. So I didn't really know that at 18 or 19 years old, right? Just trying to figure out stuff. But as time goes on, I think I'm very conscious of who I am, and even certain things that I don't know, I'm at least steadfast in knowing that I don't know. So I'm also trying to educate myself there. So for me, faith has always been a big part of growing up. My mom was a minister of music, but still is. My family's a singing family. We're big on faith. So church and religion and God and Christianity are things that are always going to persist and permeate, because that's just kind of been my identity growing up. I'm clearly Black and man as well. Sorry, spoiler alert for those who didn't know. But yeah, and so that also is a big part of what changes my work and what informs my work as well. So I would say to the emerging writer that's growing up, look at all the different identities and intersectionality of who you are, right? Not just what's on the surface, but beneath that. Are you a person that is really a big person that believes in love? Or is faith a thing for you? Do you value friendships? Do you value working, right? Look at all these different phases and parts of who you are as a holistic person, and then use that in your writing and your work. It doesn't have to be the most exciting thing necessarily that you do, but on the paper it can be super exciting. I was watching Craft Talk from Patricia Smith, and there was another gentleman too, I forgot his name right now, but watching it last night actually, and they were talking about how some things like in poems really aren't very exciting things. Like this one poem was a guy got drunk at a party, fell asleep in bed, and then his girlfriend afterwards in the middle of the night hugged him from behind or whatever, and then reminded him when they first started dating. Like, that's not really an exciting story, but you can make it a thing that the reader really feels, or the listener can really appeal to, right? And so that is showing a part of your identity in the midst of that. So embrace all your identities and then be able to be bold enough to express it.
Yeah, thank you for that response. That's an awesome answer. Brother Adam.
Yeah. Let's drill down on craft just a little bit. When you're painting a poem, do you always look for the metaphor or the rhyme or the diction or the alliteration? Are those elements something you purposely look for, or do they just flow in the process of doing a poem? And is a poem ever finished?
Ooh, great question. So the first part was about, do I think about those things consciously?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely I do. I'm really big on whether it be on page or not, or stage, the sounds of how it is. So especially if I'm performing it, like I want to, my voice can do certain things that other voices can't, right? Just like all of us. So I try to exploit those things that I think make my work poignant and make my performance poignant. So I do think about that. Like, okay, well, how would this sound if I do this alliteration here, or do I want the back-to-back S sounds in this here, So that definitely is a part to play. I'm a big analyzer. I'm a Virgo, and we're known to be analyzing of everything in the world. So metaphors, I love those, right? I love just exploring the world in a different way and always having a different way to look at things. So that's a natural thing that I do, but I do also consciously think about how I can maneuver that. One thing I've been exploring lately is I realized a lot of my earlier poems were trying to like save the world in every poem. It's like an all-encompassing thing. And then, but lately just been drilling it down to the small moments and those small pieces that can still change the world, but you don't necessarily have to do with every single poem in a whole way. You can give little lessons, a little tidbits here. And so that's what I've been really exploring lately. And with that being said, I don't think a poem is ever finished. I think you can always do more to it. I think there's a point when it's just, okay, I'm just done with doing it. It can always be improved upon, but there's just times when you just make a decision that this is when, it needs to stop. And so, what I'm doing now is actually going back to some of my earlier performance poems and really trying to revitalize them in some ways. Now, 10 years ago, I talked about it this way, but how can I make it so much better now, So, yeah.
So let me ask you, Angelo, what are you working on now? What sort of projects, either as you're role as a poet laureate, or just as your creative process during this weird pandemic time?
Yeah, man, this pandemic is really nuts. So we say this, prayers to everyone out there. Hope everyone's being safe as well. Also, especially with the world opening back up in our state, especially right now. So with that being said, I had a lot of things lined up before everything hit. I actually had like 4 or 5 events, and then we had to cancel out of those. But things are going virtual now, so which is great. So I have a monthly open mic called Vibes and Verses that I'm doing with the Friday Arts Project here in Rock Hill, and we're doing it virtually. So the next one is going to be on May 31st. And on the 26th, the Friday Arts Project is doing a fundraiser with different artists. It's called Food and Art. So they're going to have like chefs do things and artists perform different stuff throughout that whole week. So I'm also part of that. I am working with, so for next year, we're going to work on doing a poetry festival in Rock Hill, as well as creating a youth poet laureate position. And there'll be some stuff coming about that. And I think that'll be the first one in the state too, if we ever get that. So that'd be really awesome there. So that's like the poet laureate stuff that I'm doing. And of course, going into schools and doing workshops and things, just kind of waiting to see what life's going to look like before I plan that stuff out. But that's some things for sure. And personally, one thing the pandemic has done good for me is I've been really writing a whole lot. And so I decided to finally work on the manuscript. And so I've been doing a lot of diligent work on that. So my plan is for that to be released by late fall to put that out to the world. So that's been really great.
That's wonderful. How about sharing a few more pieces with us?
For sure, absolutely. So I'm actually going to share one of those pieces. No, I won't do it now. Yeah, I'll do it now. So so the manuscript kind of touches on grief, loss, and resilience, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So this poem here is called Praise. Kind of like, I think it's really important in this time to find things that you can celebrate and praise in the midst of all these things that happen in the world. Praise. Today I will praise. I will praise the sun for showering its light on this darkened vessel. I will praise its shine. Praise the way it wraps my skin in ultraviolet ultimatums demanding to be seen. I will lift my hands in adoration of how something so bright could be so heavy. I will praise the ground that did not make feast of these bones. Praise the casket that did not become a shelter for flesh. Praise the bullets that called in sick to work. Praise the trigger that went on vacation. Praise the chalk that did not outline a body today. Praise the body for being a body and not a headstone. Praise the body for being a body and not a police report. Praise the body for being a body and not a memory no one wants to forget. Praise the memories. Praise the laughs and smiles you thought had been evicted from your jawline. Praise the eyes for seeing and still believing, for being blinded from faith but never losing their vision. Praise the visions. Praise the prophets who don't profit off of those visions. Praise the heart for housing this living room of emotions. Praise the trophy that is my name. Praise the gift that is my name. Praise the name that is my name, which no one can plagiarize or gentrify. Praise the praise. How the throat sounds like a choir. The harmony in your tongue lifts into a song of adoration. Praise yourself for being able to praise, for waking up when you had every reason not to.
That's wonderful.
That was on there. And high praise for that poem.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate it. Oh, man. So I'll read this next piece. So as I just mentioned, working on the manuscript, and I won't release the name and all that stuff yet. I'm going to wait on that. But it does center on my personal story. So I am a widower, and so my wife passed away. It'll be 3 years in August. And so a lot of the poems I've been writing for the manuscript clearly on our relationship and just that journey of grief and kind of working through that. And so this poem kind of tells one of those stories. It's called Blue. I have a hard time remembering when I fell in love with water. Truly don't recall the moment waves enchanted my pristine eyes and unearthed new worlds in these pupils. Perhaps it was in elementary school when I was scribbling outside the lines, when I had not yet become acquainted with the burden of barriers. Was not familiar that dark lines were a thing you were not supposed to cross. At that age, we glided crayon across paper with no intention of halt, danced over these barricades until we made them beautiful. At that age, we would dig our hands in warm sand and soft beach, cautiously dipping toes in water, submerging feet underneath the blue until we could no longer see where we stood. I loved the feeling of enveloping myself into something larger, like I could float without effort. I never learned how to swim, though. I almost drowned at a pool party in the 6th grade. I was the only dark body there. When I saw the ivory-colored kids somersault off diving board into the cold sanctuary below, I wanted to feel what they felt, to be free enough and safe enough to jump into something that could kill me. So I jumped and quickly sank until my arms were flailing ferociously, trying to grab onto something I couldn't see, like God or love. For a moment, I felt weightless, a black boy bird flying with no restraints until the water reminded me I was human. In college, a brown-skinned girl with a sharp tongue and soft smile taught me how to float in the water, to glide and extend limbs in a straight line until my body turned still. She was also instructing me on a crash course in love, the art of stretching out and leaping until joints tired of exhaustion, to jump off with faith into a pool of uncertainty. I vowed to always study the aquatics of her. So when I visit the cemetery that now houses her bones, I stare at the lake that lays beside her, use these sea legs to swim to her gravesite, and extend my arms like a black bird trying to spread its wings.
Wow, that's just amazing. How about one more, Angelo?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So I'll do a performance piece. So in honor of this past Sunday being Mother's Day, this is what this poem is. So for all the mothers out there or mother figures, this is called Wonder Woman. So for as long as I can remember, my mother has been the strongest woman I've ever known. A queen whose face is made of stone, jigsaw puzzles in her teeth, piecing the truth together. Her eyes are bridges that connect the past with the future. And she's what I like to call a straight shooter. Will tell you exactly how she feels, doesn't care what you think or how you feel about it, wears her heart on her collarbone like a diamond necklace, holds pyramids in her palms so you can feel the royalty in her embrace when she hands you a fist full of compassion. My mama has a monument for a heart, hieroglyphics in her tongue that decipher the elegance in her speech. She is a small, a strong, and proud woman, a woman who put on high heels just to walk to the grocery store, will put on full makeup and get her face beat to the gods just so she can go to the gas station because she believes that queens should never leave the house looking like peasants. And she's a superstitious woman who believes that aspirin and vinegar can heal anything. And I'm talking arthritis, gout, scoliosis, coronavirus, the flu, you name it. She thinks these things can heal it. And that's why I love her so much, because she makes ordinary things seem remarkable. Like how she can take a 50-cent box of noodles, add some milk, egg, and cheddar, make the most delicious pan of macaroni and cheese you ever tasted in your life. So good it made Jesus smack his own mama. Rumor has it that she once put Bigfoot in the headlock, smacked Godzilla in the face and told him that his breath stank, killed Moby Dick, rolled it in flour, threw it in a pan and called it a fish fry. Yo, my mama is a gangster. I'm convinced she's thrown a couple bodies in the river because when I was younger, she performed drive-by butt whippings on me with a switch, a hanger, an extension cord, anything, if I ever got out of line. And when she was done, she would let me cry. Remind me that she ain't raised no punk. Showed me that being a man had nothing to do with the size of your genitalia, everything to do with the enormity of your character. A mama has the strength of Harriet Tubman, the grace of Cleopatra, and the style of Michelle Obama. She is a war machine with missiles shooting from her tongues that stopped men dead in her tracks and brought them down to her knees. Living proof that the most dangerous weapon in America is the voice of a black woman. And it proves that black lives do matter because she has birthed them and raised them and fought for them more than she has fought for herself. Because my mama is also a survivor. And just this past year, she fought her biggest battles yet, the giant named cancer and a titan named heart disease. And although one of these things took her breast, it could never be strong enough to steal her heart, not vigilant enough to cut off her air supply, because she is the air, a floating force too big to escape, yet too small to hold on to. A constant reminder that, yeah, God sent a son to save us. He created a woman to raise us. Thank you.
Well, we now know why you became such an accomplished poet. You had no choice.
Right.
This has been a wonderful interview and recitation of poems. And we really want to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to get to know you and to hear your poetry. And for all the folks out there, Rock Hill is on the map, and its spot on the map is getting bigger. Again, thank you for being Angelo Geter, Poet Laureate
Thank
of
you,
Rock
Angelo.
Hill, South Carolina.
Thank y'all so
Thank
much,
you,
fellas. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much.